Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Not For Nothing. I got to put this where I can make sure that our voices are bouncing up and down. Today I'm joined by a good friend who has moved around quite a bit, and he is now in, you are now in North Carolina. You're in Asheville, North Carolina. Why don't you tell people who you are?
Hey y'all, howdy. I'm Adam Guy Hayes from all over, but right now I hang my hat in Asheville, North Carolina. I work at Hot Stuff Tattoo.
How long have you been working in Asheville now? You've been there for a bit now.
I got there last August, so it's like almost been like a whole year now. Because I was in New Orleans for a year before that. And before that I was in Denver for like 3.5 years through COVID. And before that I was in New York City for like 15 of them.
So let's bounce back to where you're from originally. You're originally from Texas, you said.
Yeah.
And then you keep saying you're from the border of Texas. What part of Texas?
So El Paso is like the furthest west you can get in Texas, and if you just go to like the edge of nowhere,
The edge of nowhere. It's a good way to put
just
it.
back this side of nowhere. So it's like 3 hours southeast of El Paso on the Mexican border.
Oh,
so,
wow. Okay.
Like Big Bend National Park, like 40 minutes from Mexico.
So now you grew up there and you started to tattoo there. Is that where you got your apprenticeship and stuff?
No, I grew up there, and it was only a town with like 3,000 people in it. Little bitty town.
Okay.
And when I turned like 18, I was like, hell yeah, I really want to learn how to tattoo. So like as like an 18-year-old kid from the middle of fucking nowhere, I moved to LA
Oh, shit. Okay.
when I was 18, and I walked up and down Sunset Strip with like my like high school drawing portfolio going into Mark Mahoney's Shamrock Social Club and all these places, and just
Wow.
got run out like left and right. They were like, who is this kid? So like I pretty much like struck out in LA, but I have like some really funny stories from trying to get an apprenticeship when I was like 18. And ultimately it didn't work out, and I moved back to Texas, and I ended up like learning to tattoo in College Station, Texas, like outside of Austin.
Okay. So that's still kind of, I mean, I don't know what it was like back then, but it's definitely got to be a different neighborhood now. Like Austin is blown the fuck up.
For sure. This is like the home of the Aggies. So like Austin is like artsy and liberal, and A&M was more like conservative, religious, agricultural, mineral kind of thing. But like still definitely like lots of college kids, and it was just a street shop, you know, $40 minimum.
And you just
Opened at
like
12.
working 5-6 days a week, or
Yeah.
and just nonstop tattooing. And you were
12
what,
to 1 a.m.
19 at this point?
Yeah, like 20, 21, somewhere around there. I think I'd just been able to start drinking. So it was like 2002 is when I started. Yeah.
Okay.
Still making your own needles and doing $40 walk-ins. And
Yeah, I was gonna say that was like the.
Yeah.
It's funny. That's still kind of pushing it time-wise. Maybe it might, and that might have something to do with the fact that where it was. The fact that, like in New York, I mean, I started in '93. I mean, dude stopped making needles like that year. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Unimax was like the big New York supplier because at the time it was still illegal. It was still underground in New York City.
Till like
and
98, right?
yeah, and it was '96, and at the time, Unimax was making. They were one of the first companies doing like pre-sterilized single service needles, and they were at the time. I think it was Wes that owned Unimax,
Yeah.
and he had this whole group of I don't know what kind of it was an. Anything I say is going to sound horrible, but it was like an Asian group of people. I don't know if they were Chinese or.
Well, it was in
but they were
Chinatown.
making
So, like,
so
they
it would
had
make
access
sense.
to all these like manufacturers
And
in
they
China.
were producing all of his
Yeah.
needles. He was sterilizing them, and you can buy them single sterilized needles, and that was like unheard of. We were also buying stuff from Demographics. Buying everything was group of 50, and then you'd sterilize. You'd have to package them and sterilize them yourself. But that was like I said, '93. So I would imagine later on, if you're down south, maybe that's why. Small town, or maybe it was just a proper, dude who wanted to make his own needles. My wife made her own needles until 2000.
Yeah.
She was making my needles back in 2001.
Oh, really?
Yeah, still.
Yeah, we were still doing it, and like we would get the stuff from National. I remember like getting my account from National and having to mail them my business card so
Yeah.
that they would send me a catalog.
Yeah.
You know, this feels like so like dated and old because nobody has to do this stuff anymore at all. You know, now
Now it's a different world. I mean, if you're learning how to make needles, it's because you have an actual want to do it, Or two, you have somebody who's brought you into the business is like, no, you need to know this. Like, and again, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a necessity, but I also don't think of it as a bad thing. I mean, my wife got mad when she knew I never learned how to make needles. Like, she was just like, what the fuck you mean? You never learned how to make needles? I'm like, that's the guy wanted to make money. I was making money. You know?
I was thinking it needs to be a challenge on one of those tattoo TV shows.
So, and that's something Durb brought up recently. He was just
really?
like, "Yeah, man, I want to do like a needle making station competition. I want to do a machine building competition. Like, just be able to put a machine together, and then maybe have one with a bunch of fucked up machines and have them tune them on stage, and whoever does the best job." And it's smart.
Maybe that's your shtick here. Instead of like hot ones where we eat chicken wings, we just sit here making tattoo needles.
It
gives you something to like fidget with, and you see this like puff of noxious solder.
I was gonna say, you start getting
goes into your nostrils, and
you start talking shit. And
you get solder dust and Stay Flux or Stay Clean liquid solder cleaner like all over you. That was like my cologne for so long.
Dude, my wife has got like solder burns on her the tops of her thighs from when she'd be making needles before work, and she's wearing like a fucking mini skirt, and she's got these like she's still to this. I mean, obviously they're not going to go away, but these little pits from solder stain, solder marks. It's fucking nuts, dude. That's like dangerous as fuck. I can't imagine. You know. So you eventually moved to New York from Texas, or?
Yeah, I tattooed in Texas for like 3 years, and then moved to Astoria, Queens, and worked in New York City. Yeah, so I worked at Sacred, that was owned by Wes originally. You know, and like that was the first time I had like somebody give me needles that you could start
just
buying
use
needles
straight out of the gate.
I like brought my like toolbox of all the things to like make my own needles to New York City, only to find out that, oh cool, I don't have to do this anymore.
Right.
You know, it was like a huge, like a big grow up thing, because like it was just a street shop. I made a lot of mistakes like in my early years, because like the guy that showed me how to tattoo, you know, he was this old like Jewish biker guy, and we would cut paper towels into fourths and popsicle sticks in half, and like.
So you were getting the most out of everything.
You know, he like showed me like how to tattoo by being like, hey, well, I can't really like retell like the colorful language that was used as far as like, hey, get your ass in here. This is your first client, and in like week 1, kind of thing. And then he like stopped tattooing.
Oh, for real?
It was just me for like a whole year by myself, just like.
Basically just taking everything in and trying to make heads or tails of it.
Be like, what do you mean you have to put rubber bands on the machine? What do you mean there's a different kind of black? There was so many. Sorry, y'all, if I tattooed y'all 22 years ago. Sorry.
I think everybody's got that.
Yeah.
I mean, with any luck that you got well past it fast enough that you're never going to see those people again.
But it was so weird to go from growing up in a city with like 3,000 people to go to New York City, you know, where there's like 8 or 9 million people, and just like the culture shock of like everything that I had ever known was just tattoo magazines, buying it like Barnes and Noble and stuff.
What made you pick New York City? Like going from Texas to New York City, that's kind of a huge move.
The girl I was with at the time, she got like a job at a publishing house there, like out of college, and like I was like, fuck, I want to go to New York.
2003,
2004, something like that.
Okay,
remembering hurts. 2004 or 2005 is when I moved to New York, I think. Somewhere around there. That we moved there for her job, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm just gonna try it out for like a few months,
and see where it goes,
and then you just gotta get sucked in.
New York, I would imagine, is definitely that kind of place. Like when I lived in New York, when I lived on Long Island, where I got my start, my choices were, okay, I moved to Manhattan now, and I take my life to another different direction, or I get the fuck out of New York. Yeah. And my wife hated New York. My girlfriend at the time, she became my wife, but at the time she hated New York. She moved up from down south, so it just made more sense to get the fuck out of Dodge. And I met Corey Kruger, and he lived in New Hampshire, and I'm like, well, fuck it. I want to be a better tattooer. That's more important than growing as a person at the time, you know. Corey was a tremendous artist. I went to New Hampshire. Looking back on it, maybe not the smartest move, but still, I mean, it got me the fuck out of New York, which was a big deal for me.
Yeah. And that's one of those places that the longer you're there, you kind of like count your New York years like dog years. Because like the amount of experience and time and all of this energy that it like sucks out of you while you're there is like a tremendous amount.
Well, I just living in this, and you were living in Queens, or
I lived in Queens, and then I moved to Brooklyn. Lived in like Greenpoint, and then like
and that would have been that would have been a nice time to be there because it was before it was really gentrified, and you could still get a decent priced apartment, and it was still kind of like I was gonna say it was still like a neighborhood, like an old school neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, again, I don't know much about it because I had a very peripheral experience in New York in the five boroughs and stuff like that. You know, but I knew people that lived there that were enamored by it, and I think that's a big deal. You know,
nobody can ever live in New York City without having this like expectation of change is always going to happen.
Right.
It's been changing since it's New Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Anybody that goes in there with this closed-minded view of like, oh, it used to be like this, is not thinking too good.
Oh fuck! I mean,
it changes every 10 years.
Yeah.
It's constantly growing, constantly recycling, and that's like the beauty and the energy that city brings you.
Yeah.
If you just go there hoping that nothing is ever going to change, you're doing the wrong
Well,
thing.
and it's funny because I remember back in the day when I was working at Lotus, and Civ used to have a bunch of people coming from New York all the time because he was tattooing them, or I would start tattooing some of them. And you'd always ask, it's like, oh, where are you from? And they'd be like, oh, from New York. And I'm like, well, where were you from before you moved to New York? Because you've only been in New York for 6 months. That does not make you a New Yorker. You are still from someplace else.
Yeah.
You know?
Just because you got the Yankee hat.
Exactly. You know, you can walk the walk, but man, not for nothing. You don't talk the talk. So.
Yeah. He said the word. I feel like that every time you say "not for nothing," I'm like, "Oh, he said it! He said it!"
I'll get used to it. It's going to come up a couple of times.
That Family Guy episode, you know.
So what? So you worked for West for a while, then you went over to Red Rocket, or
I went to work for Mike Bellamy, and at the one time it was called Triple X Tattoo, and then he was going.
That's it's funny. That's what I remember him from, and then I knew Red Rocket from your name, not his.
Yeah, I interviewed at Triple X Tattoo, and like I was going to come back like a month later because Wes, that owns Sacred, they lost their lease and they were going to put in a hotel there on Canal Street, and so they lost their lease and like, we're not going to reopen. You guys go find new jobs.
Jesus,
there you go. I'm like, okay, cool. So I talked to Mike Bellamy. He's like, yeah, you can get a job. Whatever. It's going to be like a month. And then when I came back like a month later, it all had like new signs. And I was like, what happened to what's going on? And he's like, oh, like, no, like Triple X was me and like a different guy, Sean Vasquez.
Oh, okay. Oh, shit, yeah.
Him and Mike were partners, and then they had like a splitting of ways. And
Sean ended up moving to Europe at that point. Yeah, because that's the next time I'd seen Sean, I tattooed his daughter, who at that time was like, I want to say she was 20 maybe. I tattooed the top of her fucking hand. She had started tattooing in Austria. Yeah. And I think when Yeah. And I remember being like, whose daughter are you? And she's like, oh, he's going to be here on Sunday. I'm like, oh my God, I hadn't seen him in forever. Because I met Sean my first week of my apprenticeship. Yeah. He was working at the shop in New York that I eventually apprenticed in. And it was like, he was just coming in and doing guest spots. Just to get out in New York and try to, just get different clientele maybe. I don't really know why you would. Especially to go to the ass end of the island, being from New York. Why the fuck would you come out to the island? It was just weird. It was a very strange time, but that's where I first met him. So.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of things that like changed in New York City and New York City tattooing around that time.
Yeah.
You know, like certain places would close, other places would open, but it was like this big 10-year shift that so many people in different shops would just like pop around.
Yeah, I think East Side Ink, Fun City. Eventually, you'd have Fly Right, and you'd have all
New York
the
Adorned, Brooklyn Adorned, all these places just kind of like kept like bebopping around a little bit.
It's crazy, yeah. How different, how dramatically things can change, but still kind of stay the same.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. So when I came to work, finally with Mike, it was now Red Rocket Tattoo, and a couple years later I started being his manager, and a couple years after that, like, we decided to go into it together and expand into a different, bigger space.
Right.
And that space is still there. Red Rocket Tattoo, 36 and 6.
It is a really cool. So I forgot it was a 3-story walk-up. Because I remember going to visit you there one time. You get
free exercise with every visit.
Exactly, yeah. What was it like bringing equipment up? Like bringing paper towels and water every day?
You'd have to ask the guys we hired. Every year I would tip the hell out of our FedEx delivery guy, and our like UPS guy.
Understandably so.
Yeah, Bonnie, I really appreciated that, man. Like, yeah, every year he'd get a Christmas card with like a couple $100 just for like always being, couldn't have done it without him.
Yeah,
know?
exactly. That's a big fucking deal. You built up a hell of a reputation. Now, I met you at a comic convention in, I don't know if it was Brooklyn or if it was in Manhattan. It was in Manhattan, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was the Big Apple Con.
Yeah, and it was in like an armory or something like that, wasn't it?
I think it was at the Javits or something like that.
It was at the Javits? I thought it was a smaller venue. You're probably right, but I remember walking the floor and seeing you tattooing on the convention floor, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? That was one of the first times I'd ever seen somebody tattooing outside of a normal tattoo convention. And it was at a Comic Con, and you were just sitting there drawing, and you had all your Star Wars flash. And I was super blown away by that, because I was just kind of like, dude, this stuff is fucking killer. And again, it wasn't what it is now, where it's like Star Wars is just another cool fucking trendy tattoo to get to do and get, you know. Back then it was pretty fucking impressive, and to see the tattoos and shit, that was pretty wild. How did you get into that?
At the time, I was just like I felt like very much an outsider coming into New York, because I just grew up a nerd.
Right.
I grew up on a hill in the middle of fucking nowhere with like the same VCR tapes that we'd watch every day, and we lived far away from anybody. So I just like grew up learning to draw from comic books and watching nerdy stuff. So I loved that stuff.
Right.
And then you come to New York, and every tattoo shop across the world has like a different kind of culture. Some of them are inviting, and some of them are not.
Right.
And the first ones that I walked into was always like, hey, what do you want? You know, like smoking cigarettes and just being like, overall an attitude of you are not welcome.
Right.
You know? But there's tons of people that really wanted to get tattooing, because like tattooing is not for one demographic or another.
Fucking no.
But I saw this as a way to still do tattoo kind of imagery that appealed to a different kind of clientele.
Right. And back then I think you had people that were now their focus is shifting from the flash on the walls to, all right, I'm not looking for a panther, I'm not looking for an eagle, I'm looking for something else.
I'm looking for something that like resonates with me, you know? And that's kind of where I landed, because I loved it, and I just started like drawing it. And like I'd take it to conventions, because like you could always pick out the one in every crowd that was the person that was like excited to be there, but he was a little bit more reserved.
Yeah.
And then he would see something that like is accessible. It's not like some knife through a severed head. You're like, what? That's Darth Vader. I know Darth Vader. And then you'd see their like
start
like the moth to the flame, and then just like open up, and before you know it, like that moth is like opening up their wallet and just like handing you the things, and you're like, okay, cool, yeah, I can do this. This is fun.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like we got something to talk about. Like, and like they've made a friend. I've made a client for life. You know, it's like something that like we bond over. Be like, you like panther heads, I like panther heads. It's not going to do the same thing,
right?
You know what I mean? But this is like a cultural thing that
I mean, Star Wars, it's its own demographic, it's its own mythos. It basically creates its own fucking universe. So when you're able to offer those people something that before wasn't really available, or it was only available in a small part of the country that nobody ever got to, and only that area was getting to it. And at that time, we're at the day and age of magazines, and magazines would be, oh, I put this in the magazine, and you won't see it for 3 fucking months. And even then, you might not see it for another 6 months. You know what I mean? So I think back then, the one thing I've often said is, with the way social media was back then, you had a good 3 to 6 month lag time getting to make getting your feet wet and just being like, man, I'm gonna rock this shit. So by the time the next guy is doing it, you're already well established. You know what I mean? And then that guy takes his time to get established. And I think things had a different growing phase that they have now, because now it's just like immediately like, oh, I did it, and there's a guy fucking in a different time zone who's doing it tomorrow, you know.
But I remember drawing that stuff before there was a social media. You know, like literally, like I can think about, like I did like my first set of like Star Wars old school tattoo flash, and it was like
you weren't influenced by something else. You're doing it because it's something you were into doing.
Yeah, and then a couple years later, somebody's like, you should get a MySpace. And I was like, okay, cool. So I put like one of the pictures from that on my MySpace at the time. You know, like took it with my Nokia, stuck it on the thing. But like, it's such a different world, or like idea, to think of like the mentality of people that started tattooing before there was like any kind of social media. And that was your job.
Right, exactly. Well, so okay, and that's a good way of putting it, man. Because even with the magazines, like you were snapping photos of tattoos, and at the time,
millimeter. And
take
them to the photo hut and hope they didn't suck.
Oh, dude! I mean, you could literally waste an entire roll of film on one or two tattoos, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to get stuff. I mean, dude, I have boxes of negatives. I'm not going to say it was better because that is one of those things that I do not fucking miss. You know what I mean?
I still suck at photographing.
Oh yeah,
I'm just
but the
idea at it now.
Exactly. Oh, it's a lot easier now. Yeah. You know what I mean? But back then, it was like the idea of spending all that time and energy on that in the hopes that something happens, and then you're basically collecting enough photos to send to the magazines, make an impact that way. And again, it was kind of similar in a sense that there was no guarantees you were going to get published. No. Which is the same way in social media nowadays.
There's no
that you can put it out there,
they were
anybody's
going
to
to get your envelope.
Exactly.
Like, you're filling it full of like these like pictures that you've printed off at like the photo hut.
Right.
You know, and then you're hoping you've got the right postage and you're hoping you've got the right address from the back of the magazine to like hopefully send it into.
Yeah.
You know? And it was always like a question of like, why are we doing this?
See, that's the thing. It wasn't, I don't think I ever questioned why we were doing it. I just looked at it from the standpoint of like, well, the magazines are out there and we might as well take advantage of them. And at that time, you were never thinking about getting published. That was always an afterthought. So you collected all these photos. And I remember the first photo dump I did was back in like mid 90s, you know, like maybe 95 or 94, 95. And it was like a stack of pictures like that and just mailed them in. Like 2 years of tattooing. Yeah. And it got picked up and it blew the fuck up. And that's kind of how it just happened. I mean, I don't think it was a conscious effort. Like, I didn't plan on getting in the magazines. I didn't even care. I just knew that the magazines existed. You got to send them in to get them in. And that's how I looked at it. And I remember years and years later, Aaron Kane making the comment about people complaining about the magazines. He goes, dude, the magazines suck because you ain't mailing shit in. The magazines are reliant on fucking tattooers to take part. Similar to social media, except we don't really owe anybody. I mean, if anything, we were working for the magazines at the time. Now with social media, you're working for them anyway, but you're not getting nearly as much out of it, I don't think.
Totally.
You know?
And there's all these, I mean, it's the same thing as like all of these like famous Instagram accounts now that just like reshare people's stuff.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be there unless they could just like screenshot one of ours that we already took.
Exactly. Well, I think that's the problem with social media now, anyways, is the fact that everybody's trying to become famous doing something else. I mean, again, the same thing could be said with me doing a YouTube channel. It's like, you know, but with me, I'd like to think it's a bit more personal, but yeah, I would like to see it turn into something. But I think with a lot of these content creators, they're literally doing just content. None of it matters. You know what I mean? If I see one more shit fucking pizza joint or fucking restaurant or some other crap that I've been to that I know is garbage, that someone's talking up because they need to fill, 40 seconds of fucking internet, it drives you fucking crazy. And it's like, at that point, is it worth it? Like, what are we wasting our time on? Where with tattooers, we're putting it out there as a portfolio piece, hopefully selling ourselves, you know. But again, is it worth it? Is it getting seen? It's kind of a fucked up, and again, it's one of those things you have no choice.
You're kind of putting these things out there in hopes that like I get to do more like this, or I get to do like a derivative of this one kind of thing that I found like some kind of enjoyment, and I would like to do some more of.
Exactly.
So I do tons of tattooing that doesn't make it onto my Instagram.
Same here.
Tons, I'll like weeks worth, and I'm like, okay, it's fun. I have a lot of good time with my clients. They're all happy. They leave happy, but it's not something I'm going to put on my own.
You don't want to be that. I hate to use the word brand, but you don't want that to be your brand. You don't want that to be what you're known for, and that's all anybody gets from you.
Well, I'm never going to put anything on my Instagram that I did not personally draw.
That's a big deal.
If it's just a photograph of something that like I am like having to trace to do like a color portrait or something like that, maybe. But
yeah, that's different. Yeah.
Usually like nothing will ever go on like my portfolio that I didn't personally have a full hand in creation.
Right.
Or else I just don't have any like satisfaction in it.
Right. Well, I think you drawing on the skin has a lot to do with that as well, because it's not like you're not taking something verbatim. No matter what, you're taking the time to draw it, which is going to put your thumbprint on it. It's going to put your personality into that piece, which is going to change it overall in general, which is great, because that's kind of what you want to be known for.
Totally.
Like, there's nothing cooler than seeing something that's been done a million times, but and this is something I think it's lacking nowadays, but you know who did that piece based on the way in which it was drawn. So, like I remember one of the first times I think I'd seen that was in Lausanne, Switzerland with Robert Hernandez, and seeing those Kiss portraits, that Gene Simmons portrait he had done. At that time, nobody did that.
With that green kind of like tone to it. Well, it wasn't just black and gray?
Well, it was color, but it was like he had this red, this blood dripping out of the Gene Simmons mouth. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, that was like a fucking painting. And it wasn't until years later that a lot of other people started doing that. But at the time, he was known for it. And then you would see maybe a couple of other European guys doing it. Very, very few, if any, Americans were doing it. It was all being done in Europe. And I remember seeing that in person. I was just like, holy shit. It changed my entire way of thinking. But not enough for me to go down the road that he's down. You know what I mean? That was the big thing. It's like, you know, he does that, I do me. That guy does that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was the more important aspect to me, was still holding your own little piece of the yard. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the difference in being like a trailblazer and being like a frontiersman kind of thing.
That is something I definitely want to touch on, but I don't think we're not there just yet. Okay. But that is something like you brought that up a couple of days ago.
He was very much like a pioneer of like a specific style.
And that's exactly it. Exactly it. And a time where he had at least had years to be able to be that guy. He was the sheriff of that county in that time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think that was something that was really, really important and is maybe a little bit lacking in today. You know, so you leave New York and you end up in Colorado. Do you want to get into the grim details of that, or you just want to say you ended up in Colorado?
Blah blah blah. Like left New York, went to Denver, tried something new. Divorce sucks, y'all. Left there, fell in love with a wonderful woman.
New Orleans.
Amazing.
So did you meet in New Orleans? Or did you meet...
I had known her from New York like years ago.
Okay.
So, fell in love with a wonderful woman, moved to New Orleans to be together, live a little fairy tale life, explore.
So I can see... So, that's a good way to put living in New Orleans. Because I don't think it's a really great life.
It was like a...
But it is one of those things, like, it's something you read in a book.
It was like a recuperative year. It wasn't going to be like a year of progress. It was a lot of fun for what it was, you know, but it was mostly like taking like a sabbatical, more like for a year, to like really like scale back, think about like what I want to put my most effort and interest in. And as soon as I left New Orleans and moved to Asheville, I took all of that like creative juice that I had been like storing up, and I've just been like painting and drawing like nonstop since I got there. Right. I found myself in like a beautiful little house with this wonderfully supportive woman that's also like a creative being and like a painter, and we just sit there in like our weirdest outfits and crazy shit all over us and painting our hair and one sock on, one sock off, and we're running around like painting and just making fun
just being
art.
uber creative. And...
and it's been like really, really fulfilling.
Nice.
And really great, you know. Eventually I'm going to take pictures of it and put it on the internet. You know,
well, you know, did it happen if it's not on Instagram?
I think so. Like, I think some of like the best stories that ever happen is like when you live like a love life you never tell anybody, when you get to travel and never send anybody. Well, I
think there's something to be said for having something between two people that nobody has to see. I think everybody's so. I mean, I'll admit I do it, but I am also just as guilty of getting caught up in the moment and not giving a shit about taking a photo. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which is it's a good and a bad thing. It's not so much for the social media aspect. There is something to be said to go back into your phone and look at photos that happened, 30, 20 years ago and be like, damn, I fucking forgot about that. You know, now it's like I'll look at a photo from back then and go, man, I was in fucking Switzerland the week after this, and I didn't take one photo. Yeah. Because, again, you get caught up in the fucking moment, you know?
9 times out of 10, I take a picture to, like, show her what I did.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this picture looks like shit. I don't know how to do this. I'm not going to put it on the internet.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, that was the crazy thing. I was going through photos in the last 3 days because of magazines that are actually getting published, and they need photos. And I'm going through a bunch of old pictures of stuff, and I'm going through old artwork that never made it online. It might have made it at the time. I had a blog, and the blog is actually still viewable on my website, the joecapobianco.com. And you can actually, exactly. But you can actually go on that blog and see, or vlog, I guess, I don't know, and see the actual start to finish on certain paintings that never really made it to print or anything because I sold the originals and nobody ever got to see them. And it is kind of a bummer because I look back on it and be like, dude, I really like that piece. Why the fuck did I sell it? And then there are things where you look at it on the wall for so much that you go, yeah, I'm done with that. Like, I'm going to put it online. And then you sell it, and the moment you do, you're like, fuck, I wish I hadn't sold that.
I don't have a single piece of artwork that I have made on my own home walls.
You don't?
Or in my shop.
Is there a reason for that, or is it because you sell it, or they're just sitting in folders?
Never have sold any originals. Like, really ever. Like, they're in, like, flat files. Like, I'll finish it and be like, did it. Straight in a drawer. I'll scan it and make prints of it or something like that, but, like, I rarely have ever, like, hung up, like, an original piece of my own artwork.
I think the majority of the stuff that is mine in this room was framed, first of all, for an art show that we either did here or elsewhere. And the reason why they're hanging on the walls is because they just never sold. So it's like the majority of the stuff that's on the walls, I mean, I'm happy with most of them. But if it's on my wall still, it's because I just wasn't able to sell it. For good or bad. I mean, I'm not going to say I hate the fact that I wasn't able to sell it, but there are some of the ones that I did sell that I wish I still had and got rid of these.
I always felt like weird. I was like, can I sell prints of something if I also sell the original? I don't know. Like
that gets
never
into
went
that.
to art school. Never really understood like what makes something worth value or what's like. I just kind of wanted to make it like for the public in a lot of ways. So
well, which is great. I mean, I think there's something to be said for that. But by the same token, as artists, it would be nice to actually make money on doing what you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a big fucking deal in my opinion. Especially because it's an extra income that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's something with tattooing. I can honestly say, after my second year of tattooing is when I started creating flash and prints and stuff like that and going to shows, and that was a completely different revenue. I mean, you could make $3-4 grand tattooing for the weekend. You bust your ass, and then you have that flash income that comes in or the print income that comes in that can put you over the top. And
for sure.
You know, you sell.
That was my favorite part of doing shows too.
Exactly. You sell a handful of sheets of flash, and that pays for your hotel room that weekend. It pays for your fucking flight, or it pays for your gas on the way out there. I mean, that's a big deal.
And sometimes, like, I liked the idea of like going to shows to like meet people because, like, I also liked having something for everybody.
Yes.
Everybody's gonna have a different budget and a different, you know, idea of like what they want going into those places. Sometimes they just want stickers. Sometimes they just want to look. Sometimes they got $10 to spend. Sometimes they got $200. Sometimes they got $2,000.
Yeah.
But like, I liked the idea of like having a little something for everybody, just to like, you know, leave a little reminder of like who I was there. So like, somebody's got this one for $10, and somebody got this like $80 like big fancy one. But that's just as important.
Well, that was why when I used to do conventions, I never I'd always do the same ones. I mean, I did London like 8 years in a row. You did Richmond like 10 years in a row. But I always tried to make an effort to never tattoo the same people every single year because first of all, I don't want to be their on the road guy. They're only getting tattooed by me because I'm in their city at the time. I don't think that's fair for me. There are other artists that are there that same fucking weekend. Take advantage of them, you know. But it's also the idea of what you just said. I want to get to meet new people, whether it be a big tattoo or a small tattoo. That's another client. And that client could turn into the big tattoo in 2 years someplace else. Or they'll get in their car and drive and see me, and they'll get something bigger for me at my shop. So I think when you cut it down to the fact that you're only tattooing the same 3 people every single time you go to that convention, which there are a lot of people doing, and I'm not going to knock them for it. I think it's a sissy way to handle it. I think that you should be more experimental and grow a little bit. But whatever, that's the way you do you. But the idea was to meet new people and get more out of that, you know, because that's part of this industry. It's the colorful group of individuals that we deal with on a daily basis.
And that's a beautiful thing if you have that much interest. I know, like, I have been going to some of these shows in like different cities where I end up like tattooing the same people literally every year because it's like a back piece.
Right. Well, there's
or
that.
a leg sleeve, and like the only time I see them is when I go to this Toronto show, so I'm going to work on this leg sleeve again.
Right.
But sometimes those are the only people that reach out again.
Well, perfect example. You were here yesterday, and you tattooed a gal from New York that you hadn't seen in how long?
Oh, like a year maybe.
Yeah.
You know,
you had a back piece on her and a couple of scattered pieces on her.
You know, you always have like those beautiful, like dedicated people that are going to like make an effort to see you. Maybe they won't fly all the way to where you live, but like if you're within like driving distance or something like that, they're gonna like do their damnedest to keep working on a project or collect another piece. And I'm always like so grateful for those people.
And I think the thing with that from a client standpoint is to say, oh, you're going to be in, Canada next month.
Yeah.
Fuck, I'm going to fly up and see you.
Yeah.
And they'll come in from, say, whatever, the Midwest, and they'll fly up to Canada to get tattooed. That's cool because now they've just enhanced their perspective on the world. Yeah. And I think that's part of getting tattooed. I think that's a really important part of getting tattooed.
I like to think about like my experience when I'm traveling to places too. So I'll advertise that I'm going to be someplace, and I'll wait for like all of the contacts to come in, and I'll look at this project, and I'll look at this one, and I'll look at this one, and I'll kind of weigh it and be like, this one's 3 hours, this one's 4 hours. I find this one inspiring, this one not so much.
Right.
So I'm going to answer these guys and then tell this person. Unfortunately, it's not a first come, first serve. It's like,
no,
the first served is myself.
Thank you. That's a big fucking deal.
This one is like what I am excited about doing. I'm traveling to this other place because I'm excited to come make artwork that I don't get to do at home.
Yes.
So I'm not going to if I'm not excited about the piece, unfortunately, I might have to say no.
Yeah.
But maybe that I'll try to like encourage somebody to be open, or like, are you open to this placement or this kind of change, or can we do this? Is there a way that we can use this, as the inspiration for something else? Let's start the conversation,
Well, dude, I mean, when I first started doing conventions, like I remember doing the North Carolina convention down in Greensboro, and I'd only been doing shows for maybe a year, but I was doing a lot. I mean, I was probably doing 6 shows a year because I wasn't able to leave the shop that much because I worked for somebody else. But I remember doing the Greensboro convention. Dude, I was doing tramp stamps on people, but like little tiny ones. I wasn't doing fun, cool shit. I was just doing flash stuff because people came in, that's what they wanted. And at the time, I didn't have a real big clientele. So I get to do 1 or 2 really cool shit tattoos. But then it got to a point where the longer it went on, well, I don't have to do every little thing that comes to the booth.
Yeah.
Now I can be a little bit more picky. People know who I am. They want to get tattooed by me because of what I do. I might have some drawings ready for them. Or 9 times out of 10, it was like, I want to pin up, with the dog, or I want a hot rod pinup, or I want this. And then you just run with it, draw it on the spot, and fucking do the tattoo.
Yeah.
Now I see it going backward again, where I go to conventions. Hell City was a perfect example. Sunday's appointment canceled. So I end up sitting there Sunday afternoon, I'm like, and people coming up with their phone, and it was quiet on Sunday at Hell City. And they're bringing their phone up, and they're like, can you do this? And I'm like, yeah, I can, I just don't want to. Yeah. And again, that sounds shitty, and I don't want to sound like I'm pissing on somebody, but I don't want to fucking do it. Like, I got a book of Flash. I'll do anything out of that book of Flash. And they look at it and they'd be like, nah, I'm cool. And they'd bounce. But eventually somebody came up, got a couple got 2 pieces, a tattooer on the floor, really talented tattooer. So it was cool. I got to do what I wanted to do, had some fun, didn't make a shit ton of money, but fuck it. It's not about that. I met a really cool guy and his wife and had a blast, So that's more important than making money. Because if you're going to shows nowadays, I think to make money, you picked the wrong idea to go to shows for.
For sure. And I think it's really important for clients or potential collectors to understand that we are tattoo artists.
Yeah.
So every tattoo that somebody approaches us with is a commission.
Yeah.
And sometimes the commission is right for us and sometimes it's not. It means like no disrespect whatsoever if I don't feel like this is the right piece for me. Sorry, somebody else is going to be there for you.
Yeah.
But this one's just not for me.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be mean. I'm sorry. Thanks for the interest. Right. Maybe try the next guy.
Well, let me ask you a question. What I've noticed now with shows, and again, this is the parlance of the times, is the fact that you're going to shows like Europe especially, I've noticed this, and people don't have money.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of people that are coming up to you and they just be like, oh, I want to get this tattoo. And I'm like, okay, cool. And you give them a price of 400, euro. And they look at you and like, no, 200. And I'm like, yeah, no, 400. Like, you came to me, you know who I am. Like, I'm not, this isn't fucking bargain basement tattooing. Like, and I've been like, nah, not doing it. And I just walk away from it. And then I'll see them go somebody else and get that tattoo for 200 euro. And you just like, it's like, dude, you just did a 4-hour tattoo for 200 euro. And they're just like, dude, I need to make the money. And I look at that as being like, you're kind of lowering the bar across the board.
Absolutely. There's a very big fucking difference in worth and value.
Yeah.
They placed a worth of $200 on that, but I know my value is worth way more than that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sacrifice that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And like, if I try to explain that to people all the time, be like, what's your budget? Okay, if you told me from the get-go...
That's what you have.
...that you have $200 to spend, I'm going to go above and beyond that $200 because this is what you have...
And this is what you know you're getting into.
Estimated that this is what I have. This is how much money I have to put into this.
Cater your design to this image, to this price, to this
Please,
price.
I mean, this is how much I say. I don't know how much money you make. It's not for me to judge. maybe that's your whole week's paycheck, and
Well,
this is what you've saved.
That's why I get freaked out about the way things are going right
Totally.
now in this business with the cost of fucking
But if somebody's
doing
just trying to
business.
fucking nickel and dime you, fuck
And
that.
that's exactly what and again, I'm not saying that it's a nation of cheap motherfuckers. I'm saying that it's a bad time. We're in a bad way. The world in general, And
there's always space for open communication. Like, if people come to you in mind, first off, with like, okay, what's your expectations? What's your budget? Let's make it work with all of those kinds of things. Let's find the happy middle. And then nobody's going to be offended.
Right.
But if you just come in hot and you're like, okay, cool, that's going to be $1,000. And they're like, I didn't manage to save that much.
Right.
Like, that was like outside of my means. They might be like too embarrassed and you might never see them again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think collectors know to, like, because I know when I did Hell City, a couple of people reach out to me and they gave me the spot.
Yeah.
And they straight up say, "Hey, this is what I've got to spend," and I'm like, "Cool." And 9 times out of 10, it's gonna come. I'm most likely gonna come in under. Like the one guy came up and he had the top of his forearm done, and he's like, "I got this much to spend." And I'm like, "All right, cool." We worked on him, and I charged him, a couple of $100 less than what he had to spend. And he's like, "Well, I said I had," and I'm like, "Yeah," and you saw how long it took. I'm not taking your money just because you got it. That's not fair. I'd rather see you again.
Do you remember what the tattoo was?
I did it was a pinup. It was like a Halloween-y kind of pinup-y girl. So it was a fun piece. And it was top of his forearm, and it didn't take me that long.
Yeah.
I knew what he had to spend, but he still only had a certain amount of space.
Right.
And I fucking filled the space. And again, I like that. I love when people come up to me and they're like, "Dude, I fucking absolutely adore the tattoo, and you fucking went far beyond what I expected."
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know what people expect. I mean, it's just like, this is so much better than I thought it was. It's like, what the fuck did you think I was going to do to you, man?
But that's what's so funny about like the way we figure out like our the worth value thing is like, what would it have taken you to get to do that for $200? Like, was there a different content choice? What if it was like? What if it was slightly different? What would it have been that you would have been like, absolutely, give me your $200?
It's more the person than it is the product.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Like, I would rather do a tattoo that I may not be into, but I know I can do well.
Yeah.
For less money on a cool person, somebody I either know or I know I'm going to enjoy spending my time with that person, whatever, than doing something amazing for half money on someone that I don't really know and don't really give a shit about. Yeah. Like, if that makes any sense. To me, it's more about the back and forth with the client than it is about what I do on the skin. I've been doing this for 30 something years. I've done a lot of tattoos. I am like, don't get me wrong, I'm always trying to impress with my tattoos, but the fact of the matter is, it's more of the relationship and whether or not it gleans me a tattoo in the future from that same person than it is about the one and done being and just getting a great tattoo picture. I really don't fucking care.
Totally.
I've been doing this a long time, man. It's like, I love tattooing. As long as the person's happy with the tattoo, that's all that matters. Don't get me wrong. I want to enjoy what I'm tattooing. Yeah. You said it before perfectly. We do a lot of tattoos that nobody's ever going to see because I can do it. The person wanted it. It's a paycheck. Yeah. And again, that sounds crass. Don't fucking care. And that's the God's honest truth.
And it's also like really hard with shows when you're going there as like a traveling artist and you have this pressure to like it's people need to understand that we have travel to pay for.
Yep.
We have hotels to pay for. We have booth fees to pay for. We have disposables and all of these things that are going into like our mind when we come to these shows. They're not free.
No, food, eating out on the road, like it's
costing
cheap.
me money to be here,
yeah.
So I need to make money back. But there are different places in the world that I have like happily traveled to and gotten to tattoo, knowing I'm not going to make any money. I tattooed in South Africa, and the exchange rate's 11-1.
Wow.
At the time, and there was like some like big dick swingers there that were like doing the calculator and multiplying what it is times 11 and showing people the price. And I'm like, dude, that's 3 months rent for them, what you're trying to charge them.
Oh, that happened.
That's not the way the economy works.
That happened in Russia a couple of years ago. You had a bunch of these, these Californian dudes that went out there as a crew, and they were just like, people coming up there wanting to get tattooed, and they were just like, yeah, this is how much it's going to cost. And they'd be like, no. And then before you know it, they're 2 doors down talking to a local tattooer who did a job that was probably better than what he would have gotten from somebody from here. And the guy did it for a third of the price. And, and again, it's not like they're putting you down. They're not putting. You got to look at the room.
It's just like, this is like, you're in a different part of the world. This is the economy of the way it is. Like, dude, I did tattoos for $30 in cases of Corona.
Jesus.
You know, I never had to pee so much in my life. But like I did like really fun things, and it was so cool to like be there. And like, that's the beauty of like traveling and tattooing, is to like, that's like experiencing other cultures.
Yeah, most certainly.
You know,
again, Rome,
I'm not trying to go to South Africa to go like pay my rent.
Well, and therein lies the other thing. It's the experience of travel, which is a big deal. I mean, we went to, we were in Israel a few years ago for this event, you know. And it was more about the experience. You didn't get paid to do the tattoos. You know, granted, everything was paid for. It's a free trip to Israel. It's free food, whatever. But it was more about the experience of tattooing individuals that were there because of circumstances. And it was a great experience. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you didn't really care about the money because it was all about the overall experience. So there is that trade-off, most certainly, you know.
Money is just an exchange of energy, and that fulfills you in a very different way. Whatever that experience was in Israel, like, fills you up in like a very different, like, wow. Like, no money's going to beat that.
Well, and again, it's the same thing with, like, sometimes you got those big tattoos that you're doing, you get a good payday on, but you just can't wait to be done so you can get to the end of the day where you can hang out with your friends and go out to dinner and talk shit at the bar and just enjoy the moment of being able to hang out amongst your peers. Mm-hmm. And that's probably more to my liking now than it is about the tattooing. Yeah. It's more about going out and being around people that I know, that I've known for many years, and just want to enjoy their company. That's a really important aspect for me.
That's why we just need to start organizing convention after parties, but without the convention.
Yeah, well,
so if we could just set one of those up here later and just be like,
dude, I trust me, man,
after party, but like, y'all don't have to be worried about.
Well, I think that's been one of the joys of like the walk-in days that we've been doing. Like, we did the walk-in day this past March, and Tom Strom, Jackie Sandylands, Jimmy Litwalk was here. Dude, it was fucking great. Like, it was like being at a convention. We had four of us tattooing in this room. Mm-hmm. And there's people outside, and we're all just doing enough tattoos to get by. And then at the end of the night, we're just hanging out. And it was just an absolute blast. It was 3 days of that.
You're riding that wave of energy.
It was 3 days. It was 2 days of hanging out, and Tom did a couple of appointments. Jackie did an appointment. Jimmy did an appointment. I had my appointments. And then that last day was just hanging out and doing walk-ins. And it was like, you get that energy of like clients, and, you know, we're having a couple of drinks and we're drinking while tattooing. And it's like, it's a party atmosphere that...
Put in the green soda bottle.
Yeah, exactly. That was I've not been that clever. It's still, you're drinking out of disposable cups. This way, you know, you could drink while you're tattooing and stuff. All right, so let's get off of that.
Okay.
So one of the things that, you know, really stood out for me is the amount of drawing you do. You went through a time where you were filling up sketchbooks with all kinds of drawings, animal drawings, plant drawings. Like, you were just making a conscious effort to not just draw on the skin from a photograph, but actually taking the time to fill up sketchbooks with all these nature drawings and just stuff that you're going to tattoo most likely eventually.
Yeah.
Was that to catch, you know, to get your hand used to that, to have that in the back of your mind, in your like file in your head, so that the next time you were asked to do a wolf or a lion or whatever, you could just fucking sit there and draw it.
Absolutely. And to me, it was like a kind of like a reminder and practice in humility. Okay?
That's a good way to put it.
Seriously, like, how many tattoo artists that you know have this like rock and roll mentality? They want to be a rock star all the time, but none of them want to take music lessons. You know what I mean?
Well, we
may have this like accredited kind of like notoriety or popularity because of like Instagram, and he's a famous artist, but like, how much do you actually practice?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Cool. You can whip something together. You can trace it out of this book. You can stamp your name on it. I don't feel good about that. I want to be able to know how it works, how to draw it, bare bones, everything.
That is a proper old world way of thinking when it comes to like to drawing skills.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I will admit, I'm one of the guys that, like, I would go to conventions and known for pinups. I started reproducing, you know, Elfgrens and Petties and Vargases, and that was my thing. That's where I cut my teeth. It eventually got to a point where it's like, well, I don't want to reproduce somebody else's work. I want my own.
Totally.
But having done all that stuff, you're concentrating so much, and I think this is where people get lost, is you spend so much time reproducing what you see, you don't learn how to actually draw it.
I know, but that's like part of my personal satisfaction. To me, it's like a musician winning a Grammy off doing a cover song.
Right, you did something unique to something that belonged to somebody else.
Yeah,
you made it your own.
I want to be able to like claim full ownership over like the whole illustration.
Right,
because like that's what brings me like personal satisfaction.
Well, I mean there's something really to be said for that. And I'm sure that people that are copying photographs are looking at it from a similar perspective, like, oh, I fucking nailed that piece. And the biggest complaint that I hear from other artists and myself is the fact that it's like, yeah, dude, you did a great job, but so did 20 other people before you got here.
Sick job at tracing that, buddy.
Yeah, it bums me out to see like people still doing the Michael Keaton Batman because they saw Nico do it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, man, it's already been done. Like, why would you not be trying, especially in today's with AI, the amount of crazy shit that I'm seeing online, and we're starting to see that translate to skin now. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think it's so. I think that Michael Keaton Batman's going to disappear, to be honest with you, because with the way things are going right now with AI. It's fucking nuts. You know what I mean? And this is something I wasn't
even AI, but just like Google image. How many times have we seen that exact same fucking lion head tattooed?
Which is why people that I've spoken to
that they want to put the blue eyes in there and make it pop.
Which is why I think people are embracing AI so much, is because they're looking at it from the perspective of, I don't have to see the same fucking Google image. I can go to fucking AI and I can have that create something for me. It's still from something. It's just doing all the work.
It's beyond me and will give me a panic attack thinking about. Like,
so
I like sat there and looked at it the other day with like my wife, and like I was just like, I'm gonna go make a drink.
Well, part of me wants to embrace it because I look at it from the same perspective as the way I would look at like using photo reference. That I'm going to take it, I'm going to make a loose tracing, I'm going to work what was given with what I found or what I created through AI, whatever, and I'm going to make it my own. So regardless, it's not going to look like this. It's going to look like I drew that, or I redrew that, I should say. I'll be honest with you though, it is overbearing, it is overwhelming to go through prompts and whatever else you need to do to make these fucking images, and I just don't. I mean, I'm having a hard enough time fucking figuring out how I'm gonna edit this fucking thing down. I can't imagine having to figure out prompts to figure out what kind of drawing I need to create for my clients. Other people rock it. I mean, they crush it. You know.
I think I looked at it like I had done like a half sleeve where I had drawn on something or other, and I went home and she was having to do AI as part of like something with a graphic design. She's a graphic designer. And she's like, have you ever messed with this? I'm like, no. Well, okay, we'll put in this thing. And I like typed in the things of like exactly what I had done that day and just felt wholly inadequate.
Oh, compared to the AI, or?
Yeah, because I was just like, this came up with it in
actually
like 5
created
seconds.
something. Like, were you impressed by what you saw?
I mean, I can see how like you can keep manipulating it
and
to get to like something, but I was like, I wouldn't have thought of those like color choices.
So that's another thing. I
wouldn't have thought of like that structure, or like the way that works. I mean, like I could have come to this, but it would have taken me like 20 derivatives and a lot of like working out, and I would have had to have that as like a clear vision in mind. Yeah. But like you can take all these like, you know, turns from like one prompt and like figure out where it's going, and I fucking hate it.
And just keep building on that and building on that.
You guys didn't see Terminator 2? John Connor? Come on.
It's like it's coming for your fucking jobs, man. It's coming for your jobs.
It is. You guys worry about immigrants. I'd worry about the goddamn computers. You know? Taking your jobs and South Park shit. You know?
As far as what you touched on before, the idea that earlier generations of tattooers were like the early settlers.
Oh, yeah.
This is like what's the word? It's something. Oh, I can't remember the name of the saying. It's a Star Trek film.
Brave New World.
Yeah, Brave New World, or even the Undiscovered Country. Undiscovered Country.
Yeah.
Because to me, when I first started tattooing, and we kind of talked on this the other day, but when I first started tattooing, I didn't know anything. Like I just figured I don't even know if I can make a living doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to me, it was just, I've got the shop, and I've got the people that come through the door, and I need to make them happy to get their money.
Right.
You know what I mean? And at the same time, I get to have fun doing drawings on the skin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I never thought of it beyond drawing on the skin. I never thought I could be more creative than what I saw on the walls.
Right.
But then you come up with this way of putting it where it was like, okay, so now you don't know there's a world out there. And now you start to fucking walk those roads. Or not even roads. You start to just wander out in the field and you go to find yourself where you find yourself.
I explain it like this. Like, I think of, like, tattooing as, like, you know, like the whole of an industry as what it was like in the frontier times of America, discovering a country. You know, there's going to be like the earliest explorers that had no clue how to do anything and were just like making this shit up left and right, you know? And then later on there's these like, you know, early pioneers after like they know that this land is here, like this craft is here, this art form is here, and they're going to go like start exploring these different ways. But there's not anybody that's come before them to tell them, no, you can't fucking do it that way.
Right.
You can't outline that thing in red. They're going to try it and see how it goes.
Right, exactly.
You know?
And that was something we did. And it's funny. I think that's something that I think that maybe is a little bit lacking nowadays because you still have people, and I know people that do it all the time. Yeah. They continue to walk down the road that they know, they've seen has failed. But they're so set in their ways that they continue to do that. And it's like you sit back and it's like, dude, you already know it doesn't work. Why the fuck are you doing it?
Well,
and then if 12 other people have told you, they didn't tell you that because they're trying to keep you from doing it.
Right.
Or because, you know, they don't want you to bite their style. They're telling you because they know how it's going to end.
Are you saying you never tried it when you were a young buck?
No, I did. I totally did.
And did somebody tell you no?
No, back then, no. Nobody told
you no.
No.
Would
nobody
you have
told
listened
me no.
to you? Would you have listened to them if they did it?
Back then, probably not. I was a cocky prick too.
I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't. It took like actually learning it, getting bit by the snake on this trail,
and that's
be like, oh, okay, fuck.
Yeah, I mean,
this didn't really work out. I got to touch it up later. I'm gonna go back through there and put a black out.
I mean, yeah, one of the conversations I've had several times is palettes that just simply don't work. And again, I see stuff nowadays that I look at and I'm like, yeah, it's gonna look like dog shit in fucking 3 years.
Palettes
like,
and pigments, some of them don't age anymore.
Yeah,
you know,
not
I mean,
at
some
all.
of these brands that I thought were great 10 years ago.
Dude, the Starbright thing for the longest time, the yellows and oranges that just disappear, and you sit there and it's like, yeah, exactly, right? And then I've got powders on me. This yellow's powder from fucking Cap Zips. And no, don't get me wrong, Cap's was a hell of a tattooer. But again, that's tried and true. There's a reason why I use the same.
I've got like powdered pigments on my leg that like the minute the sun kisses it, I'm like limping for like an hour.
Yeah, it just fucking blows up on you. Yeah.
Sucks.
Well, but that was one of the things of being able to futz around with different shit and listening to what people had to say. I remember when I first started making pigments with Corey back in 2000. I purposely went out and talked to a handful of older guys that I knew that made pigments back in the day, and then I talked to the younger guys that were making pigments today or at that time. And you take both of what they're offering and you mix and you fucked around with it.
Yeah.
And you kept an eye on what it was when it was going in and out because the people now that are just buying pigment up and just using it and running.
Not to get back, but like that's kind of like what I mean about being an early explorer.
Yeah, I don't want to lose sight of that because that's like, important, I think.
You were like given the tools from a couple of other people that you could then still explore within your thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And be like, okay, this is what works for me, and I'm gonna like explore my way through this. So like I'm like in my own way, like blazing my own path. You know? Yeah, nobody told you couldn't do it before, so like you're an early pioneer. And then now there's like these folks afterwards that have had, you know, they don't have to worry about blazing their own trail.
Trail's already been. It's a super highway now.
Right. They can just put it in Google Maps, and it just takes them there. They don't have to worry about reading a map. They don't have to worry about like finding their way. They don't have to worry about the pitfalls and dangers because it's all been like pre-spelled out to them ahead of time. Now, like people wonder why apprentices are so good. Like a year into it, they have everything at their disposal. You know, and it's not to their fault. It's just like this is where we are.
Oh yeah, I think that's something
in the 70s.
I think that's something that needs to be explained or mentioned is the fact that this is not two older fellas knocking the people of today. That's not the case because that's the first place everybody's going to go.
For sure.
It's like stop being an old man, stop bitching and complaining about your better, about who's going to be your better. It's got nothing to do with that, but it's the idea of letting people know where things kind of started and the fact that when you lose sight of that. And just simply don't fucking care. Yeah. There's never any real honest respect or admiration for what people were able to achieve with nothing. The fact that people act like coil machines are somehow inferior to rotary machines is a perfect example of that. Because it's like, well, have you ever used a coil? Well, no, why would I?
Yeah.
So shut the fuck up, because you don't know what you're talking about.
The thing is we got to appreciate it when it was the frontier.
Fuck yeah.
Before it was like completely sullied and settled and all these different things. And like now I look at all these people selling all these like weird aftercare things and all of these things that can shine your fucking tattoo. And you know what those are? You know what they called those in the old settlement times? Snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
So it's all these people that they're like coming to these industries where like there's money to be made here, and they're fucking sucking it dry, and they're fucking like diluting it.
And this is what kills me. This is what kills me.
You can buy this shit on Amazon. You can buy it on here. So it's not just
that's what kills me about the trade.
Supporting the local trade anymore.
That's what kills me about it, is the fact that it's in. Well, it's not anymore. It's far beyond our grasp.
Yeah.
But it was in our grasp for a time for enough people to sit back and go, no, go fuck yourself. You don't belong here. Get the fuck out. Stop trying to sell bullshit. There's no reason for fucking 90 fucking Glide products. There's no reason for, I'm not going to say you have to stick with fucking Vaseline or A&D ointment. Yeah. There's a reason why people do dig on certain things. The majority of people who are using something is because somebody else used it before them. And they don't realize that the only reason that person used it is because it was given to them. How many people do you know started with one product and now have gone through 4 other ones?
I know people that started with Speed Stick.
Right, well, exactly. But did they move on? Because we moved away from Speed Stick for several fucking reasons.
Yeah.
The first being not because it was an inferior product; it was still better, but it was a wrong product to use.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a bad way. It was an easy way to spread fucking infection. You know what I mean, or bacteria, whatever. So there was a reason why we moved on. Most people now move on because somebody makes them a better deal. Yeah. And I don't mean better deal in the sense that they're getting paid to use the product. They're just getting more of the free product. And they look at that as being their payment, not realizing that they're making that person tens of thousands of dollars for pennies. And that's, I think, a big problem. Stefano from New York and Miami made the comment recently. It's like, don't work for anybody. Now, keep in mind, Stefano made a living off of being other people's fucking guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he has his own company. The Gorilla Gloves, I believe, is him. But he worked with a lot of other products and a lot of individuals.
By tons of different things.
And there was a lot of those people I didn't admire. I think they were shitheels. Yeah. You know what I mean? They were the bottom feeders of our trade. And I say that knowing that they were tattooers at one time. They were machine builders, like proper machine builders at one time. They're not anymore. And it's probably not the person anybody thinks I'm thinking of, but it's not that person. But it might be that person. Whatever. The point being is, I'm not looking to take a shot at a supplier, but the fact is, to have somebody like him tell you now, oh, you shouldn't work for somebody else unless you're getting paid to do it. If your free product is not enough. And that's something that me personally, we've been, Eric Merrill and I got dragged into some shit. It's like, well, you were one of the first fucking, sponsored tattooers. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, you got all your gear from Pulse. So did Eric. Like, you don't recognize the fact that these are friends. Yeah. Like, if you started selling a product, I would back you because you're a friend, and I want to see your product go well. Yeah. If your product sucks, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to use it. No offense. But
just wear the T-shirt.
No, that's not something I don't even do. I don't even do that. Yeah. I just started wearing people's shirts. But the idea was, it wasn't about trying to get something for free. It was about wanting to see your friends get better. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't take every product for free. I mean, I've often said it with Bishop. I wasn't sponsored. I bought stuff from Bishop. I didn't, again, to Franco's credit, as a friend, he would sell it to me for wholesale. And then I would take it and use it. And then I would end up selling it because people wanted the product, whatever. I've said this on this podcast before. And that's why I use the hashtag, it's a friendship, not a sponsorship, because it's not about being a sponsorship.
I think that's a beautiful thing, too, because, like, what real friends do is, like, they support their friends no matter what.
Exactly.
I'll pay full price.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I did that with Hive. Like, when Hive caps came out, I've known Travis probably both of our whole careers. I'm pretty certain Travis has been tattooing longer than I have. At least been tattooing longer than I have. But I remember when Hive came out, I tried to buy it. I didn't even tell him. Like, I just made an order online. Yeah. And the order was canceled. And then I got a box full of shit. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I don't want the stuff. Yeah. I want to support you.
I want to see you succeed.
I mean? Exactly. So for the longest time,
I want to see change happen within our industry, and I'm like, oh, you're doing something I appreciate.
And Hive Caps was genuinely a fucking pretty unique product. You know what I mean? I mean, again, you could say the same thing about quick caps. I think Hive is a bit more. It's a better traveling product. I don't know. I'm not looking to knock one over the other. I don't use either one, to be honest. I use regular ink caps. I think I'm pretty utilitarian when it comes to my tattoo setup. I'm not one of these guys. Although I do like getting the brand new game for a little bit. But then you get to a point where it's like, well, do I really need slide over or some kind of glide over Vaseline? You know what I mean? I don't. I don't give a shit.
I actually, I took the very first sponsorship that I've ever taken in my career just recently.
Which with whom?
With Good Guy Supply out of Canada. Okay,
so now with Good Guys, I personally don't use them. I know them very, very well. They're really nice guys.
They're fantastic. And honestly, like, I had like this moment of realization when I was in New Orleans, because like New Orleans, I was like working there, but New Orleans is like one of the filthiest, dirtiest places on the planet with zero recycling program.
Ooh, really?
The amount of glass that they go through, and you just have to throw it away.
That's surprising. You're right, because New Orleans is a party capital. They make a fucking mint on.
And like every Mardi Gras, you watch these bulldozers come down the street and just load up all this trash and throw it away. Horrible. They say that whole strip of New Orleans is just kind of held aloft on like old Mardi Gras beads. You know what I mean? But like I was thinking about, all of this trash that I'm perpetually like making, and I was like working in my own like private studio, and I was like, I don't feel good about all of this stuff all the time. And Good Guy Supply, who I knew like pretty well from doing Toronto shows, were making like a full line of like plant-based and compostable, biodegradable stuff that actually works really fucking great. Right. Like all their ink caps and all their barriers and all of those things are like plant-based. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna ask them. Because like, and like I approached them, I was like, guys, can I do anything for y'all? Like I was just buying it regardless. Every time I'm just gonna buy it anyway. But like, can I help like draw awareness to what y'all are doing, because I believe in it and I think this is a good thing to do for our industry. I can't get behind like disposable grips that are like don't have that. There's not something. I'm still trying to find like the happy medium, and they have like a recycled plastic version. I know. Good,
I was gonna say Electric Ink has a biodegradable line. I believe it's so. What I've discovered in the past year or two from my wife is there is a difference between biodegradable, compostable. Like there's different levels. I know from what I understand, I believe it's biodegradable from Electric Ink. They have a full line. It looks plastic, but it is biodegradable. Matter of fact, it had to be sent to the United States to make sure that it was biodegradable, and now they sell it. So I get those from those guys. But again, now I'm back to using the pen more often, which kind of drives me out of my fucking mind, because I really do like my transverse nanos for lining and stuff like that. But so it is one of those. It's a catch-22. Totally. Traveling the pens are a lot easier to
I think it's just like mitigating harm. So like if you can do like baby steps here and there, so you're not just like dumping tons of it. Exactly. That's great. Like it's just like any small step that you can kind of do like is going to make any.
So I had looked into the biodegradable ink caps, a bunch of different stuff. I will admit full on that the problem here is I've got 8 tattooers, you know what I mean? And me and 7 other guys, and man, I'll be honest with you, the cost of disposables per month is fucking stupid. Yeah. And again, because we don't have sponsorship, you know what I mean? Like at one point I looked into purchasing wholesale through Electric Ink. And again, the problem with Electric Ink is they're in fucking Brazil. So it's in order for me to order something, it's literally whatever money I'm saving, no exaggeration, whatever money I'm saving is going to shipping. And I'm like, all right, so I'm not saving any money. So what am I doing? So it's a catch-22. While I want to do the right thing, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that a shop, especially of my size, creates so much disposable waste. That is just a shame. Yeah. And I'm just trying to figure out a way to do it that it makes sense. And again, and I know that sounds ignorant, but the fact is, man, bills are bills. And
it's not ignorant. It's just like facing the economics of the craft.
Yeah, it sucks. And and that's one of my issues with a lot of the suppliers. We talked earlier about. Let me make sure I don't want to jump from something. I didn't want to go too far ahead because there's other things. We talked about the supply machines, and we're now into that. Yeah. Into that. Actually, you know what? We can. Know what I did want to get into. So you did talk about. We talked about this this breaking new ground, and how the artists of today have these super highways ahead of them, where we back in the day were literally looking at barren fields of fucking grass.
Yeah.
Do you think that the average tattooer of today would have survived back then? Now, keep in mind, it was a completely different playing field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we didn't have the internet back then. We dealt with 3 or 4 magazines back then. If we wanted to learn, you had to either pick up a phone, get in your car, go somewhere. So there was it was a completely different playing field. Do you think the average tattooer of today, and this is an unfair question because I don't think that the average human of today would have survived in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't think tattooing necessarily means that much because I think there are more average humans tattooing now than there are average tattooers tattooing now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, the people now are just cut from a different cloth. They are regular. God, anything I say is going to make people sound like just fucking soft piles of shit.
I'll stop you because, like, I think all artists are very quickly visual learners. You know what I mean? Like, I can look at something and then figure out how to do it, like, really quick.
Okay.
Okay? But you ever crocheted before?
Crocheted?
Crocheted.
Oh, crocheted. Okay, you said that. Crocheted. No, I never have. My wife has. I've watched her. I don't think I could get my head around it.
So, like, if I stuck a set of crochet needles and some strings and showed you a picture of a doily, how long do you think it would take you to figure out how to do that?
I don't want to
before you made your living off selling these fucking doilies.
I mean, it would take forever. Especially because that, to me, is like a trade. That's an old craft. That's an old style craft.
What do you think tattooing is?
Okay. Yes.
I'm just saying. But follow my line of thinking. But, like, now people can just Google it. They can get a book.
Yeah.
They can watch a YouTube video and be like, I'm going to make my living selling these fucking things. I'm going to set up an online internet shop doing it. No problem. I can get it in all these different colors because I can order it online. And now I can start mass manufacturing these things because I already figured out how to do it in this 5-minute instructional video.
Exactly.
And I know how to do it perfect now.
See, but till this day.
But if you didn't have access to those things like we didn't, we had to, like, you know, bum little bits of information. Be like, oh, how are you tying your knots? Okay, cool. Cool, I do that too. You know, or whatever the fuck you're going to do within your craft.
But the funny thing with that is, do you still, I mean, I know I do it. I will wake up hours before my day is supposed to begin. So I get up at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I will wake up at 4 in the morning without fail because of nerves and whatever. And it could be a life issue, or it could be a home issue, it could be a work issue. A lot of times it starts with a life issue, goes into the home issue, and then eventually makes it to the work issue. And I literally am sitting in bed thinking, okay, today I got this guy coming in today. It's a color piece. I got to do this, that, and the other thing. Okay, so my line drawing is done, so I got to figure this out. And instead of doing what maybe somebody of today would do, which we go online, find somebody who's done it and said something about it, whatever, I'm not doing that. I'm sitting in the back of my head going, all right, so I can use a 7 mag to do this. I can do a 9 mag for this. I can figure, you know, I'll always break things down. So I know how I'm going to approach something the moment I sit down. When I get to the shop, I've got it already figured out. I've been doing that my entire life. Or my entire career, I should say.
I'm definitely more lackadaisical.
You don't start thinking about it until you're sitting down.
I didn't know what I was doing until she showed up.
I will give you credit. You were setting machines and shit up, dude. I don't do that until the fucking stencil's on and it's drying.
But I only use like the same. But like I didn't know what the tattoo was going to be until she like.
But you have a standard setup for everything you use.
Pretty much.
So
like from my own like Illustrator practice, I know what I like and I know like what I brought.
Right.
Really. Like,
and
I
you knew about the size you were going to. Yeah. You have more to pick from at home.
You know, but like that is one of the beauties of my approach of like just doing things all freehand all the time.
Right.
But that's also why I practice. Because I can draw anything on paper. I can easily draw it on a human.
Exactly.
You know? But all it takes me is like us having like an open dialogue, a conversation about what it is that you want to get done.
No, I watched the way you approached her personally, and you knew her well.
Yeah.
But I watched the way you approached the idea, the subject. You both discussed, was the ship the original idea, or was that something you guys both said, oh, that's better than this idea?
The ship, it was the main content. Like, that was like the ship that took him to the Arctic. Like,
right.
I did a tattoo yesterday of the Endurance, like Ernest Shackleton's ship that got trapped in the Arctic. And so I did like a ship trapped in the ice.
And the idea behind this was the endurance of being able to overcome something. And I'm certain that was her intention.
Correct. Not
wanting to be a fucking sailor, but just enduring over life.
Those guys got stuck out there for like 8 months.
Yeah.
and then had to like crawl their way back out of it, but they all like survived, and it was like this long story of endurance, which was also the name of the ship.
A day and age before you could just make a phone call.
Exactly.
Get somebody
like,
to fucking
hey, we're gonna need some more guys out here.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but my approach is like I can like discuss it, kind of talk about ideas with them, look at like visual references right then and there, and it'll be like, oh, okay, cool, you've got trust in me, cool. And I'll draw some jibbies on their arm until I get like a loose shape. But it's the same way you would do on onion paper. We're like, I'm going to draw with orange, and then I'm going to draw with red, and then I'm going to go over with a blue. I'm just doing that same thing with like my marker layers.
My problem with drawing on the skin has been I am entirely too sloppy of a tattooer. Like I would have a hard time keeping, like I'm the stencil stuff I use now is out of Brazil. It's probably the best stuff I've ever used. It's probably the same. Well, I don't know if you get the stuff from Brazil, from Good Guys, but pretty certain it's the same product they're making.
The stencil stuff?
Yeah, they're stencil too.
I use like this much of it once every 6 months.
Oh, because you're drawing everything on the skin.
Yeah. So they sent me like this giant, Good Guys sent me this giant bottle of like stencil stuff. One of these days I'm going to open it, guys. You know, and it's going to be great.
To their credit, like I said, if it's the same stuff I'm using, I'm almost positive it is.
I loan it to the guys at the shop all the time. Like, you guys, it's got a handle. Y'all do the thing. Y'all use
Oh, really? It's that big of a thing?
It's big. It's like big. You know, I'm like, I will never.
They gave it to the absolute wrong guy.
They really did.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I'll just take some more markers, guys.
Yeah. Every now and again, like I'll pass stuff on to the guys because I'll go to a convention and people will leave us stuff all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I don't use that.
Yeah.
So, but I don't throw it away. I'm not that guy. I mean, but I'll come back to the shop and I'll be like, hey, there's a bunch of stuff here if anybody wants it, and let them fucking deal with what they want. You know, again, I'm real picky about the things I want to back and the things I'll use. You know.
Yeah.
And having said that, I use a lot of different stuff. I've gone through a shit ton of machines before I finally settled on what I've got now. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm of the opinion I'm not going to find anything better than what I'm using now. So I've pretty much settled on that.
Yeah.
Pretty that and the fact I'm also not doing a ton of tattoos where I can really fuck around with a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah. And like most of your stuff, you're kind of like dialing in like your tools for like one specific style.
Most certainly. Like there are certain things that I know I want to use the transverse nanos for because they're needles on the bar. I like needles on the bar versus cartridge needles
for shading.
To lining for lining. Shading, I have another set of transverse with a different spring setup for shading and stuff. But there is something to be said about just grabbing the pen and being able to set up 3 machines with 1 machine, as opposed because nine times out of
the cartridge out.
Exactly 9 times out of 10 with the transverse nanos, they're needles on the bar. So I usually set up 2 to 3 liners and 2 to 3 shaders. Usually just 2 shaders, but occasionally I'll go to a 3rd shader.
Yeah.
Where with cartridges you could just grab whatever; it's not a big deal. But lining with needles on the bar, I just prefer the tip to the armature. Like you know what I mean? Like you have more feeling than you do with a cartridge in a pen. Yeah. For me personally, like I said, Paulo kind of fucked my shit up by making this new pen with this give that really does feel like you're using a coil machine. But the difference is, it's still a pen. It's still a bit not quite right in my hand. Mm-hmm. And again, it's mainly because I prefer the traditional setup.
Yeah, you're just used to the weight. It takes me so long to like. I do have a pen that I got recently. I got like one of those Bishop liner ones. Yeah. It's a Bishop. The Packer.
Yeah, which is like a 5.0 fucking
4.
Oh, it's 4. Like that. The 4 is I think the liner is a 5.
Yeah. The hardest thing is like to figure out like you like me like have this muscle that for years has kept your machine from falling forward.
And now you're kind of doing everything from the wrist, it seems.
So like because it was heavy and you had this like counterweight here, so like we were trying to keep the thing from plunging in.
Yeah.
Now it's opposite. Now you have to remember to push down.
Yeah, you have to
because it doesn't weigh shit, and so like
and again, that's part of the problem with rotaries is the fact that
line worth of shit with
there's no connection. Again, that's why you should try these. Well, again, you're using coils, so. Yeah. But again, these transverse nanos, it's mainly the weight of the nano versus the weight of a coil. Mm-hmm. A friend Jason Eisenberg, when I went down there a couple of years ago, I just started using them. I'm like, dude, try this. And he's like, fuck. And he had a couple of Cubans. And he's like, I was like, what'd you think? And he's like, I'm getting rid of my Cubans, you know? But again, it's everybody to their own liking. But yeah, there's just something to be said about the weight. And I love coils. I mean, I still own them all. I just never use them because they're just too heavy now. And I know that sounds like a fucking
I'll use them for like different
bullshit
projects all the time. Like but I dabble in a lot of different things and a lot of like different styles.
Yeah.
It seems like the other hard part that is stressful about the freehand like approach is like I don't spend time with Flash. I don't draw a lot of things ahead of time.
Right.
I practice, but I don't spend a whole lot of time drawing like ready to go tattoo designs.
Right.
So like there's tons of guys at our shop at Hot Stuff that like crank Flash out all the time, and they have books full of stuff to be like, oh, I love your stuff, I want to get something by you. Cool, this is ready to go. Versus people that come to me and they're like, oh, I love your stuff, I'd love to get something. Is there anything you want to do? And I'm like, what do you like?
Yeah, I prefer I'll have stuff drawn up, but 9 times out of 10 I want to know what something.
I just need to make more time for that. Honestly, like, I need to like put stuff in there and be like, I think this is cool. I'm gonna render this, but like I'm so loose at sketching and tight with tattooing.
Well, so back in the day, what was nice about that is someone could put an idea in your head, you drew it up on paper, and me personally, I draw 2 to 3 things for each person. Yeah. Minimum, usually 2, and sometimes it's 3. And I remember being able to go and say, "Oh, do you like this one? Cool, get this one." Or I'd look at the 3 and go, all right, I'm not even going to show them the other 2. I like this one. That's the one I was going to get. And if they hated it, then I could show them 2 more. Yeah. But the nice thing about that was to have all these extra pieces that I would put on the Flash. And all those images would eventually make it into the public, and I'd be able to sell them. Yeah. Now, nobody buys fucking Flash. Yeah. Like, so I got into this Rat Fink thing a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And I'm like, fuck, I got some, I got to do 1 or 2 Rat Fink pieces. So I'm like, fucking yeah. So now I start drawing all this fucking Rat Fink stuff. And I'm like, I'm putting them out there, individuals, like, yeah, man, who wants to get, and nothing. Nobody wants it. Nobody's got any interest in getting Rat Fink stuff. So I put together a new set of Flash. I did 6 sheets plus a print, so 7 sheet Flash. Bring it to the next convention. Somebody literally looked at it and was like, oh man, cool. You actually printed a set of Flash? And I wanted to fucking strangle them. Like, go fuck yourself. I printed. Like, it's like I stepped back in time. Like, and made a set of Flash. What the fuck ever, dude. Like, yeah, that's what we used to fucking do. And people used to admire it and buy it, hang it in their shop, and want to tattoo it. Yeah. I really do want to think that might actually come back, where the Flash, because there's enough young tattooers, whether it be young in time in or inexperience. A lot of inexperience. A lot of people that have just been tattooing for many years but just can't draw, and really have not grasped the real subtleties and the major points of tattooing, that will still pick up Flash just because they need something to kind of bounce back on.
Well, Flash was like the earliest like learning experience for like so many tattooers, like in like my generation, yours, and stuff like that. Like I have like this fun exploration idea that I always ask people when I meet them, that it's like in my same age group. I'm like, what was your favorite set of Flash you had at the shop when you first started?
How many people say they even remember that there was even Flash?
They will remember, like, and like, what was your favorite Flash that you remember?
Me personally, back in the day,
when you first got started, you're like, this is tattooing.
It was super torn between for black and gray, it was Jack Rudy.
Oh yeah,
like the Jack Rudy Flash back in the day, because especially I was into the whole fantasy thing, and he did a lot of fantasy stuff. Hell yeah. The other one was an artist named Mauricio who did all these like dragons and wizards, and that was all full color, and that was like big thick lines, but then I could also look at Edward Lee and fucking Bernie Luther, and like, dude, it's so hard for me to pick. I'll be completely honest with you.
That's great.
But what off the top of my head, Mauricio and Jack Rudy.
Perfect.
Those are the first 2.
Can you see in your work that you still do the influence of all 4 of those?
Oh, most certainly.
In everything you still make.
Most certainly, because of like I said, the tight liners, all products of Jack Rudy. We didn't do single
color choices.
Yes.
Backgrounds.
Yeah. Well,
thick
so
to thin,
I think the difference with that too is
also
I also had a lot of influences from outside the business, from animation.
Yeah,
I was a huge
airbrushing.
Yeah, exactly. And that so so for me the color transitions were never tattooing. Yeah. It was always airbrush. It's like, how do I go from here to here in the smoothest way possible? And that's where I think the dipping from dark to light came from. So it was like you'd work your black out, and then you dip. I never dip my color into my black, which is something that the guys from Dark Side and Eric still do. With me, it was like, what's my next darkest tone? I also didn't have, and this is going back into the 90s, didn't have the forethought to go, okay, well, if I want to make a darker red, I can go to blue or green and deepen my colors that way. I always went to purple because purple gave me a richer red. So I lost out on the subtlety transitions by not going to other colors. But regardless, it was always, how do I get from here to here? And it was always dipping back and forth and always using a dirty tip and just making that transition. I'm not going to say it always works. Again, this is one of those instances I say, do as I say, not as I fucking do.
Yeah.
But yeah, because sometimes you get to that too soon, or you don't get to it. You don't get to it fast enough, so your transitions don't break down the way you want. But that's part of like the spontaneity of the way you're working, is the fact that you want that kind of natural feel, which is why I've never been a great traditional tattooist. Just to whip shade black into solid red,
but it's maybe not something that like fully like drew you, because like listening to like the guys that you cited as like your earliest influences, none of those were like hard traditional either.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
It was like the same experience as me. Yeah. Like mine, I loved, like there was like a Philip Blue, Jack Rudy split set. Of, like,
so that came, I remember when that came out, I was fucking blown away. But I still like Jack stuff better.
I had that stuff on the walls, and I had like the Ed Hardy like flash book, the red book that was flashed, that we had clipped out pages, and a lot of it. That was like my earliest things of being like, because you know, there was no fucking internet. We didn't have internet at the tattoo shop. There's no tattoo books. There was one book that we had.
That's when the magazines came out with Flash in it.
All you had was fucking Flash, and that's how you learned to draw from. So, like, those things were my earliest influences, as being like, okay, if I'm going to draw tattoos, it has to look like these kinds of things. And, like, Brian Everett stuff was in there.
Brian Everett, Corey Miller.
Of Cherry Creek.
Yeah. So again, Cherry Creek. That's what
I consider my style.
That came out years.
I'm just Cherry Creek, but modern.
Yeah, that came out years. So that's a good way to put it too, because the way you do wolves, the way you do, and especially the subject matter,
animals, creatures. Hell yeah, redneck
Cherry
galore.
Creek was definitely. Rand? What was his fucking name?
Paul.
No, it wasn't Rand Paul. It was
I don't know what that word means.
Oh God, Rand. Fuck, I forgot his name. We were just talking about him a couple of days ago. His name came up. Whatever.
The guy that did Cherry Creek?
Yeah, the guy's name. Because he popped up at I was down in Delaware talking to BJ Betts, and it turns out he lives down that way. But his name came up. He's like, "Oh, you remember this guy?" And I'm like, "I do. Why? Why do I know that name?" And then he's like, "Cherry Creek," and I'm like, "Oh my God, I hadn't heard that in forever." Uh-huh. But it was one of those things, like, for me, Cherry Creek came after the fact. Like, I was now collecting individual art. I wasn't picking up shop art. I was picking up art that, like, that's when, a couple of years before that was Vinnie Meyer, Dave Waugh, and then you had, like, all the West Coast 222 stuff, and fucking Chris Trevino, and fucking Scott Sylvia had his own set of Flash, and just so much cool shit. Yeah. And it was more about collecting individuals. Looking back on it now, because I have books full of them, I look back on it and I'm like, nobody is ever going to get this shit.
I look back on it and I'm like, man, really good concept, poor execution.
Exactly.
But I would love to go back and look through all these things and be like, okay, I'm going to make a new Flash set, and I'm just going to use Cherry Creek as my inspiration.
Right.
Because it'd be a lot of fucking fun.
It would be fun. It would be a wasted energy, because people would look at it and be like, oh, that's really cool. And then they'd reach for their phone, pull up fucking Pinterest and be like, but I want this. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I remember going to when we were at Hell City. Exactly. There you go.
I'm going to send it to you. It's going to be great.
I'll hang it. Dude, so we were supposed to do, our next Flash Walk-In Day event was supposed to be for the Tyson-Jake Paul fight. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that got pushed back because of Tyson having an ulcer or something like that. And it's gotten pushed back to November. Oh. But I still want to do something, like I want to do a Flash Walk-In Day. And when we do the Flash Walk-In Days, we always gear it around stuff that we want to do. Like it's Flash, like the last one we did was Cheeky Tiki. It was basically a Tiki inspired sheet of, and it was like we had 25 sheets of Flash on the walls. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's plenty of stuff for people to pick from. And we set up a bar, we put out food. It's fun. It's a great fucking day, and it's fun for everybody. People get great tattoos. We have fun doing the tattoos. Nothing is a chore. Nobody comes in with their phone being like, I want this. Mm-hmm. It's just fun. So I want to do another one. So I think I wanted to call it the White Trash Barbecue Day, but everybody felt that wasn't PC enough. So
I got one better for you. I mean, like, it was going to be a boxing day, so just call it the Italian Stallion Day and just show Rocky on the big screen and just do Italian-themed fucking Flash.
Okay.
Because those guys will show up.
Well, so the funny thing about that is one of the things we were going to do is because New Haven's known for its pizza, we were going to do a pizza party day.
And import it from New York.
No. So I would love to fucking do that. I would love for a fucking food truck to come in from New York and have like Vinny's fucking Brooklyn style pizza and put it in my parking lot and see how many fucking people lose their shit. Yeah. Because originally I wanted to show up.
Bad news is good news. I mean, they're going to talk about
it. Well, we can even have we can have a New Haven style on one side and a New York style on the other side, and just have like a fucking old school rumble at the end of the fucking night.
You can do it as like a showdown. Be like, which do you prefer? This is the fight to end all fights.
Here's the problem with that.
Hell with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. New York pizza
style versus. That's a good idea. If anybody's,
more people will fight over that than like those two.
I'm going to put this out there. If anybody would like to see that happen in New Haven at my shop, write that in the fucking comments. That could be our next fucking pop up.
Absolutely. So, I'd come to that.
Don't get me wrong. I love it, man. I've got friends that don't let me talk about New Haven style pizza in their restaurants because they don't want to be blackballed.
Pizza is also a better unifier than a fight.
Well, so the idea was hamburgers and hot dogs. So we'd do White Trash. We'd have a pizza shoot up there because you have to. Mm-hmm. But just do beer, just fun, old J.D. Crowe Flash. And again, I'd have to do the Cherry Creek stuff, not because of me, but because of the generation that came after me. Yeah. But just to have all that old Ken Cameron Flash. Like, dude, there was that one sheet, like the Ken Cameron Panther and the fucking Little Rose, and it's like, back in the day, we did these things every fucking day. Somebody did that Panther once or twice a day. The fucking there was a Jack Rudy rose and a Jack Rudy, it was like vine, this little vine that was black and gray that we colored on the wall. And dude, every day, if there were 4 guys tattooing, each guy did that thing. It did one of those 3 or 4 times a day, minimum.
I used to do that Cherry Creek, tiger inside of the butterfly.
I remember that.
Butt cheeks all the time,
all day long.
I remember it's like so many of those crosses from that stuff.
Yeah, all day long. There were certain things that you just did without even thinking about it.
You're like, oh god, I gotta do that again. Yeah, I still got the stencil. It's okay.
That was the best because the first shop I worked in, dude, the guy had a file folder before his Flash got out of hand. But he had a file folder, and he would make you save the fucking stencil that you used, which is, by the way, disgusting. But we'd have to save the stencil, put it back in the file folder, so that when we pulled it, there would be the file. And was that already in the stencil? Make sure you make a new one. Don't make a new one if you don't have to. All right, you cheap fuck, I'll do it. Yeah, exactly. So that was definitely a thing back in the day.
We just had the line drawings on the back of our Flash sheets. Like, we just pull it out and set it on the Flash thing.
So we used to do too now is like, when we left that shop, they opened Lotus, and I went to work for them. And we had a really good selection, not nearly as much as the first shop that I worked in, but a nice selection of Flash. And whenever people would come in, they'd be like, yeah, I'm looking to get tattooed. I'm like, what do you want to get done? Well, I'm not really sure. And you'd be like, hey man, why don't you look around the shop, get a feel for stuff, and then come to me with what you see. Mm-hmm. Or they'd come in and be like, I'm really wanting an eagle. Yeah. And we're like, okay, cool. Well, why don't you do this? Look around the shop, find an eagle. Well, I don't want something off the wall. I'm like, trust me. Find what you want and then bring it to me. Show me what you see. And then we go in the back and put it on the light table, make a quick little drawing based off of what they gave us. And then you go out there and be like, what do you think of this? And we would do that. Even if you did that eagle 3 times that week. Yeah, even if you did that eagle 3 times that week, you always redrew it. And the only reason you did that was it wasn't about making the money as quickly as you can. Because again, at that point, we were more in the way of artists than tattooers. So it was more about just doing something fairly original. So you didn't get bored. And you could at least say everybody who got that fucking eagle got something different. You always colored it a little differently. And again, I know this goes against the way a lot of these young fucks nowadays are thinking about Flash. That's not Flash. You fucking do it exact. This way people know what yeah, go fuck yourself. You want to play act at being a 90-year-old man, knock yourself the fuck out. That's not what being a tattooer back then was about. It was about creating something cool and fun for the person without having to fucking give them something that they had no idea what to expect. You literally took something that they liked and you fucking made it better, or you at the very least made it theirs.
Yeah.
And you did that with every client that walked in the door. That was our rule of thumb back in the day. Versus now where it's like, no man, it's got to be black shaded. Where's your gutter or fucking skin? Why did you put white in it? I remember talking to Stanley Moskowitz back in the day going, all these fucking kids that are bitching and complaining about, oh, you don't do this color, you don't do this color, you don't do... If we had these colors back in the day, you don't think we'd be fucking using them? And he's 110% right. They didn't have it, so they didn't fucking use it. Yeah, and they were trying to cut corners the whole fucking time.
So many of these people treat like this tradition like dogma. Like you have no room for lateral movement or change or stuff like that. Like that becomes like too stifling. I think everybody's trying to make everything their own way. Like I love being a tattooer. I don't necessarily like doing everything everybody always tells me to do. I'm gonna like figure it out for myself because I'm stubborn as shit. And like that's what still gets me excited. You know, like if I had to just do everything else the same way that everybody has always said do it, then it feels like factory work. Then you're just like following the map.
Yeah.
You're not looking up to see the things along the road. You're not blazing your own path. There has to be room within all of this for you to make your own way and to feel like you're making your own mark within the industry.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you took the tools that like your forefathers like gave you and you made your own path. You know?
Well, how do you feel about the individuals that are dead set again? I mean, don't get me wrong, and I don't think there's a reason to feel anything because I think that there's always going to be a place for people who never want to stray from the norm, who never want to stray from being a traditional tattooer. And again, I think there's something to be said for that. Don't get me wrong. I honestly believe that. For all the people out there who think I'm a fucking trad hater, it's not the case. I think that if that's the road you choose to take, knock yourself the fuck out. Mm-hmm. But I think to take shots at other people for changing that is kind of fucking silly. Like for me, when I do a traditional tattoo, I want it to look like I did it. Mm-hmm. To a degree. I mean, I feel weird because I look at it and I'll look at traditional tattoos and be like, yeah, it's better because that's how my brain recognizes a traditional tattoo. When I do it, it's me doing a traditional tattoo and it shows. But my clients are the ones that love it. My clients are the ones that like, dude, it looks like a fucking sticker. I'm like, cool.
It's art. Art is subjective. If your clients love it, it's because they love your style.
But I always look at it not so much as being art. I do look at tattoos as being tattoos. Like I want my tattoos to last forever.
Tomato.
No, agreed.
The same rule applies.
Agreed. Yeah,
you know
agreed.
What I mean? There's going to be tattoos that I look at and love, and you're going to look at it and be like, that's a turd. And I'll be like, look at that fucking thing. It's sick.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, no, Adam, it's a fucking turd.
I've seen tattoos that have been done by friends of mine and people that I know and admire, and I'm just like, what the fuck?
Some of those tattoos might be my tattoos. Some of those tattoos might be your tattoos.
My tattoos, exactly.
I'm just saying, there might be ones that I look at and be like,
I just don't remember doing it.
Joe, I'm going to need you to sit down for this talk, okay?
Exactly. Yeah. Dude, I'm waiting.
We all need those people in our lives. It's going to be like, you.
I'm waiting for someone to sit back and be like,
you had a late night last night, huh?
Exactly. Maybe you should cut down to 3 days a week, dude, because you're fucking killing people.
Yeah, we all know those guys.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
But what I'm saying is, like, it's subjective. There's not going to be any style hating because we don't have to fucking wear it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm going to get the tattoos that I like. My style has definitely changed over the years from the stuff that I loved getting initially to like the stuff that I want to get now.
Right.
I don't know if you know this, but tattooing hurts. I want to get tattoos that are like this big now.
Yeah, there's nothing more fun than getting a tattoo for it takes like an hour and then just kind of like, cool, we're done?
Yeah, I just want a Woodstock that's this big. That's it. Okay.
Done. Dude, I remember getting the sides of my neck tattooed and like, I think DJs took him 4.5 hours and he apologized. He's like, you do know the only reason it took me that long is because it was on the side of your neck. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I get it. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to defend yourself because it took too long, whatever. And then I got the other side of my neck. It took 6.5 hours. You know, and then I got the front of my throat from Jason Lawyer when he was in Virginia, and that took like an hour, and it was atrocious. It was the worst fucking tattoo I'd ever fucking gotten. Oh. And I was just like, and it's beautiful.
He's a nice guy.
It wasn't even him. I don't give a shit if he was Mother Teresa, dude. He's a butcher. But it wasn't even him. It just hurt. It was just a much worse tattoo, a much worse area. You know what I mean? Yeah. BJ did my knuckles, and I was like, yeah, that sucked. That really sucked, you know? But again, I haven't really gotten tattooed. I was just out to see BJ last week, and he's like, so, you want to get tattooed? And I'm like, no, I fucking don't. Like, first of all, I didn't put any thought into it. And secondly, no, I fucking don't.
But just like that, like there's stuff that you like now versus like stuff you liked 15 years ago.
Most certain. I'll be honest with you, my it's not so much the stuff that I like, it's the artist I am attracted to.
Totally.
Like to me, it's like when I got tattooed by Victor Chill, it's not like I wanted a particular tattoo from Victor. I just wanted something from Victor. When I got tattooed from James Tex, when I got tattooed from Nico, it wasn't like, so perfect example of this. I picked Nico to do the top of my hand for two reasons. One is because of the way in which he works and to see whether or not it would hold up on a hand. And I know that sounds fucking petty, but yeah, it's petty. I wanted to see whether or not he can make it stick. And I also wanted... it's petty. Fucking... No, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I was making a joke.
But the thing is also is I knew I didn't want Nico... And again, I'm not saying that Nico doesn't draw. I'm sure he does his own thing. But for the most part, you go to Nico for reproduction. And I wanted a George Petty or a Gil Elfgren girl. That was the two... Those are the two... My two favorite old-timey... pinup painters, and I couldn't decide. Like literally, we got down there. I had three of each picked, and I showed them to Nico, and I'm like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "I don't know. Which one do you like?" And I'm like, "Which one do you think?" I know what I think would make a better tattoo, and I know which one I like more, but I want to know which one you feel more comfortable producing. And he's like, one of these two. And we ended up going with George Petty. And again, Petty to me is still... What I like about George Petty's work is it's a bit more animated. It doesn't look like a real person.
Yeah.
It has that slightly animated
appearance. Pinup.
Exactly.
Because it has like a characterization.
Exactly.
It's him. Not a one. It's not just Olivia. It's not a
exactly,
1-for-1.
Exactly. And Elfgren, the thing that separates his work from the photo is it's painted and you can tell.
Yeah.
But when I went to James Tex, it was about getting a James Tex tattoo.
Right.
It wasn't about having him reproduce something for me. I love the way in which he draws, and I just wanted something from him with his hand, with his thumbprint on it. And I got that, which is funny because everybody's like, "Did you draw that?" I'm like, "No, that's part of one of the reasons I'm attracted to his work because I feel like if I'm trying to emulate anybody's drawing style, it would probably be him." You know what I mean? And it's funny because I think we've been tattooing about the same amount of time. I don't even know. But I didn't discover James Tex until maybe 15, 16 years ago, you know? But he blows my fucking mind. I absolutely love his stuff.
Phenomenal illustrator.
You know, like if I ever get my back
him
done...
and his son, Anthony. They're both... Him and his son, Anthony.
Oh, his son Anthony's fucking crushing it, dude. It's
nice
the Canadian tattooers in general just blow my mind.
Yeah.
Blow my fucking mind. So
I'm excited. I'm going next week for that show.
The Toronto show, yeah.
It's always... The demographics in like different areas that you see, like... Toronto and Canada itself, like all of it, like has like such like a heavy influence of like really good illustrators
and Japanese, Japanese inspired.
And like you can see like an influence of like James Tech and like quite a few other people in like a lot of like Steve Moore. Fuck's sake,
those two guys, I want to say, have changed the landscape of what it is to be a tattooer in Canada, and both, you know. And before that, you had Paul Jeffries, and everybody was just like,
Smiling
"Dude,
Buddha,
this guy's no fucking joke." You know, what I mean, I remember meeting him years ago in at the Nationals convention in Philly. In like '98, and nicest guy in the fucking world. And it's like, and he, I was like, "You tattooing?" He's like, "No, man, it's a pain in the ass to come over the border, so we're just fucking chilling. We're just doing our thing, you know." And I was just kind of like, it's a bummer. But again, I wouldn't have been able to get tattooed by him anyway because I was tattooing in the hotel room at the time. We went to Nashville just to go, and when people found out we were there, we're like, "Where's your booth?" And we're like, "Oh no, we don't have a booth. We're going to be dicking around the room all weekend." So me and Eric tattooed. I think we were on the floor maybe 15 minutes each day, and then we were back in the room. We did 3 tattoos a day. Like I worked from like 12 o'clock in the afternoon till like fucking 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning in the hotel room. I mean, it was disgusting because you're sleeping in the same beds that people are sitting on, and it's not the most conducive environments.
Well, circling back then, so when you're saying like the tattoos that you do get now, you're more selective about the space that you have.
So obviously
because
the space
you want
and
to
the
get
person.
tattooed by the person. So what was it, do you think about Victor Chill that like drew you to the idea of like wanting to get tattooed?
I've often said Victor
specifically.
I think to me Victor is probably one of my favorite tattooers based on the fact that I love the way in which he draws. His control, his use of the colors, his use of line weight. He's like a wonderful animator.
Did you know him before?
No, so I got really fortunate. Like I met Victor. Where the fuck did I meet him? Might have been Spain. And out of nowhere, dude, he was coming to Massachusetts to do a thing up at Night Owl. And he reached out to me and said, hey, could I work out of your shop? And his English is fair at best at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. You can stay at my house, whatever, man. So he was with us. He was supposed to be here for 5 days. It turned into like 8 or 9 days. Like, he just didn't want to go. He wasn't working. He worked the first 5 days, and then it was like, okay, so we go up to Massachusetts now to see Timmy, right? And he goes, maybe one more day. And literally, it was like 3 more days of just hanging out. So I'm trying to find shit to do with this cat. Like, I'm like, oh, let's go to Mystic, and we'll have lunch, and then we'll come back here and draw. Like, I didn't know what to fucking do, dude. But eventually, he did make his way back up to Mass. And I got tattooed by him. Was it that one of the... I think I got tattooed by him on that trip. I got the top of my foot done. My wife got the front of her shin onto her foot done. Like, he did a handful of really beautiful tattoos while he was here. But what I'm attracted to is the way in which he draws and the way he applies the tattoos. And I love his art in general. So, and again, that motherfucker could do anything. He could do realism. He could do animation. He could do Japanese. He could do old school traditional tattooing. Like, he is just he's just one of these young kids that... And again, he's not a young kid anymore. He's been probably tattooing close to 16, 17 years at this point. But fuck, he blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. Who's your favorite tattoo? Like, if you had a... Like, whether it be someone you want to collect something from or someone you admire from... Because the thing is, I never want a tattoo like somebody else. I'll pluck little pieces from them, but I don't want a tattoo like them.
Yeah.
Do you have, say, your favorite... The person you want to get tattooed by and the person you most would like to maybe emulate or pull stuff from?
There's still like a few people out there that I think are like tremendous tattooers, and like given the amount of space that I have left, I would still love to go to Switzerland and get tattooed by Philip.
Yeah, he's almost like a unicorn at this point because we're getting older. And
I know. I got to speak to him like a couple of times, and like he's just like such a kind human to like chat with that like. I'm more drawn to like people's like energy, basically, of like who I want to get tattooed by and like who I want to have on me, because like there's like plenty of tattoos that I have, and I'm not gonna like name names, but there's a few people that I was like really impressed with their stuff, really excited to get a piece from. I'd get tattooed by them. I'd sit there for like hours, and that guy was just a fucking dickhead.
I've often said that the experience means more than the tattoo sometimes.
For sure. And so like now I look at this fucking thing that's on my body and I'm always like, fuck. Yeah, it looks cool. That guy's a dick. And that's all I remember like 20 years later.
I'll be honest with you, man.
Like, I would rather you have a completely adequate tattoo for me, but an amazing experience.
So that was something I've often had people come up to me like, I'm thinking about getting tattooed by this person. I'm like, cool. Just know he's going to be a douche.
Yeah.
And they just be like, what do you mean? I'm like, know full well that
I don't like to like forewarn somebody like in that industry, but there's a lot of people that are dicks out there.
Oh,
I'd rather like present my best face forward like on the internet or any of these kinds of things to be like, no, How often
do you think though it's because the person gets caught up on being an artiste and not just doing a tattoo?
I think they're just stuck in their own head. I think it's ego. I don't think it's about artiste. It's just like, this is my internet presence versus like, this is just who I am as Adam Hayes.
Right.
This is who you are as Joe Capo. You know what I mean? Like, you are what you present.
Most certainly. I mean, there's no guarantee. Again, that's one of those things like, if you only saw 15 minutes of something and you thought I was a douchebag, you're wrong. But if that's all you're willing to listen to, that's fine. But I mean, I think you have to really sit down but I think I wear it on my sleeve. I think you kind of wear it on your sleeve.
And like everybody
there's no hidden cabinets in your fucking room.
No. And everybody gets like the BuzzFeeds things like reshared of like the shit talk and stuff like that. But you guys don't see like the beautiful, supportive human that this person is within the field of tattooing. How much he fucking cares. Like, what do you want to see get better about this industry? Like, we can sit here and bitch about all the things that go wrong and the things that we're losing.
What do I want to see get better? Dude, I don't know if...
What are you excited about?
I'll be honest with you, dude. I feel like I want to be like Thanos for fucking 15 seconds and just go like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I know that sounds harsh, and I know that sounds defeatist, but yeah, man, I don't know if they're... What I would like, honestly, what I would like to see happen is people think. I don't care about tattooers. I want to see the client wake the fuck up and stop following trends, stop watching television, stop doing all the bullshit, and just get to know people for who they are. And that's it, man. Stop going someplace because you think that's the only person capable of doing that, because it's not, you know what I mean? And again, I'm not saying all clients are like that. I mean, it's just that it seems like the majority of people are. So if I wanted to see things change, I want to see people just become a little bit more better educated.
Yeah.
Stop play acting that the young guys are the only ones capable of doing what they want.
No,
you know, or the only ones who know how to fucking do anime tattoos are the fucking dudes who spend time with their hair in front of their eyes and fucking, you know, watching TV until the wee hours, you know?
Well, now you get to get excited because that's where we are in the cycle now.
Are we, though?
We're almost there. Because, like, now it's like, the way it goes in tattooing, remember, like, when it went from, like, private studios to, like, regular studios to, like, then everybody circles back. It used to be fun because it used to be a secret. And you had your guy.
Yeah. Agreed.
And now it's not you can see like the bubble of like popularity and all of the things has reached its breaking point. Now it's oversaturated. So now you're going to see people, like, I think, scale back. And now is like the time for us to actually like really like engage on a human level with like the actual people that want to get tattooed. Because that's what's going to keep this like moving down the line.
Well, which is one of the reasons we do the Flash Walk-In Day. The Flash Walk-In Days is two pronged.
Yeah.
The idea is for us to bring in new clients that want to be part of something, and the other part of it is for us to have fun doing what we put on the walls. Which is why I tell people, it's
and
like,
there's a third
this
part.
is about us.
I can tell because like I can tell you have like a very supportive local community of people that love your shop and love you.
Right.
And those are always going to be the people that's first in the door.
And most
so
certainly.
This is just as much of a giving back opportunity for you to be like,
Yeah.
hey, guys, cool.
Which is why...
we got this pizza, that's food, New York is better, all of these things. You get to explain it to your friends, but have a good time. Like, that's your way of giving back to your friends.
Which is why we do it. Like, the idea of putting food and drink out is to welcome people in. And to make sure that if you didn't get tattooed that day, or you just decided to roll up with 3 of your friends, only one of which is getting tattooed, you still get to enjoy yourself, and then maybe want to come back when there's not an event going on, because of the good time that you had that day.
Totally, you're building up the culture of what your shop is.
Almost like it's almost
how
like
you engage with your people.
It's almost like an art night, or like you open your shop up to individuals to come in for the first time, and you basically put your best foot forward, and you go, hey man, we're here for you. Like, come on, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you want to draw? What do you want to do? You gave me some good ideas with the drinking draws or the art nights, you know.
Well, it's not the person that shows up for $100 walk-in, and that's the only time you ever see them in your entire career.
I don't ever want that.
That's gonna be the person that like keeps this show on the road after 30 years.
Yeah. Which is why I think I don't do day rates when I tattoo people, because I look at it as, I don't want people for one tattoo. I want them to continue to come here. I mean, if you're traveling across the country and you're trying to score a name, fine, I get that. But I want there to be such an impact on you, and I want to leave such a mark on you that you just look at it as be like, oh, I got to get more from him, not just from somebody. Yeah. And a lot of times, and again, I'm sure this is probably only maybe 2/3 of the people that are paying these day rates that only get the one tattoo. It's because they just get priced out and they can't afford it.
Or they just they're like, okay, well, I had all of that whole experience.
Yeah, what else is there?
I collected my one piece from them, now I'm like moving on.
Yeah, it's like, what else is there?
That was my one night stand with Joe Capo.
Let's hope you walked away without any kind of rat.
Yeah, exactly.
The only mark that was left was by the tattoo machine. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or?
Man, I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say we touched on a lot of the things that I kind of definitely wanted to touch on. You're now in Asheville, North Carolina. Asheville is an incredible place. I think it is a wonderful destination spot for a tattooist like yourself, who has a traveling clientele for the most part, because you've lived in New York, you've lived in Colorado, you've lived in Louisiana, you lived in Texas, so Asheville is a perfect place for people to come.
That's where I hope to be for like a long time. Like, I have moved around a good bit, but it was never really by choice. It was always like personal life things that kept like happening that kind of like made me, unfortunately, like need to leave. Like, I've moved around way more than I want to, and I just want to be put for like a while. So y'all can come find me in Asheville at Hot Stuff Tattoo. I'll be there for a while, look for the guy with all the orange stuff. Yeah. Hot Stuff's, by the way, is a gorgeous tattoo shop. It's like, I would venture to say it's probably one of the nicest tattoo shops in Asheville. It's like, it is
all wood and
Yeah.
fucking
And there's
amazing old school flash.
Great group of guys,
Yeah.
beautiful flash like all over the walls, fun stuff to do around the area. You know,
So you hoping to be there for a bit then?
I'll be in Asheville for a long time.
Nice.
You know? So,
all right.
Yeah. Thanks
Perfect.
for having me here. Y'all can
Oh.
see more of my stuff at AdamGuyHayes.com.
Yes, and everything will be in the description below this. I want to thank everybody for tuning in again. I really appreciate it. In the meantime, all I got to say is like and subscribe.
Yeah, do the thing. Thanks for having me.